What's good, everybody? Yes, your boy Sunny, and I'm back again with another episode of Sunny Talks. And on today's episode, I'm here with a very special guest. I'm here with Origin of Styx. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how's it going, bro?
It's going all right. I actually just did another interview earlier, and I'm very excited to be on here though, and continue being interviewed and podcasting and whatnot.
Okay. So on this podcast, what we like to do is tell the people your life story, working from the earliest memories up to present day, work our way into like your interests and all of that stuff. But before we get into all of that, can you let the people know who you are, where they can find you, and what you do?
Yeah. So my name is Ethan. I'm the founder of a music project called Origin of Styx, Styx. I am a freelance audio engineer from Phoenix, Arizona, as well as a DJ and instrumentalist. I grew up with a chronic sleep disorder starting from my childhood, and it's something that's been affecting me all my life. And so I used my music project as a way of documenting a lot of the experiences that I went through over the course of my life.
Okay, and I'm sure we're gonna get into all of this, but what is the name of the disorder that you currently have? Well, that you have.
Um, yeah, I'll definitely get it more into detail later because it's technically a OSA, which is obstructive sleep apnea, an issue related
Okay.
to my breathing in my sleep. There is a subtype of sleep apnea that some people recognize called UARS or upper airway resistance syndrome, which is a similar condition, but some people just view that as being under the same umbrella as sleep apnea.
Okay. All right. So it's a more severe, more intense form of sleep apnea.
So basically, to get into the history of sleep apnea, right? So, from my understanding, it was first discovered in like the 60s, and it was mostly being studied on people that were heavier, obese, and snored, where they would go to sleep. And then oftentimes they would snore, there would be resistance in their airway, and they would sometimes even stop breathing entirely for upwards of 10 seconds or more, which would cause their blood oxygen to go down.
Mm.
And so originally it was believed to affect that demographic, but in the 90s in Stanford, then there was another type of sleep apnea that was discovered where there were these people that were not really having these apneic episodes where they weren't stopping breathing, where their oxygen wasn't going down, but they were still having this unrecoverable fatigue despite being younger and thinner and not fitting the typical demographic. So the
Mm.
problem with this subtype of sleep apnea, UARS or upper airway resistance syndrome, is that the a person might spend the entire night struggling to breathe and not be able to get proper sleep architecture, but their breathing might not completely stop entirely. So it could be harder to detect on a sleep study, whereas a lot of UARS patients might actually have more somatic complaints associated with it, as opposed to just sleepiness.
Damn, that's crazy. It's so much things going on in this world because it's like I feel like we've all like heard of people that passed at least like the basic level of sleep apnea. And it's like you said, we usually associate it with like heavier set people or like like mouth breathers and stuff like that. But you're saying like this one it hits people like that don't technically fill those check those boxes off for your classic sleep apnea. Wow, okay,
That's
cool.
correct.
Yeah, so we'll definitely get into all of that. But okay, so where were you born and raised?
I was born here in Phoenix, born and raised here. I'm currently 24. And I've always been here, and my plan is actually to move closer to the downtown area where there's more clubs and more of an active nightlife so that I can get more involved with my career there.
Oh, okay, as far as the music goes. And what would you take what would so you said you're an audio engineer, you have your own like your own like you make these not I wouldn't oh I don't want to say that they're not albums, but you make these projects of music. What type of musician do you consider yourself?
Yeah, I guess that's why a lot of times I use the word audio engineer. people ask
Hmm.
me, "Are you a DJ?" Because I do DJ, but at the same time, I think that's kind of silly because DJ is an outdated term for a disc jockey, and I don't jockey any discs.
Yeah.
I do something kind of unique where I produce all of my own music, and then I only DJ the music that I produce myself. But when it comes to audio engineering, I'll do other work as well, whether it's uh, I could be recording or mixing or mastering albums from other artists, whether they're instrumentalists. Like, let's say, for example, if there was a metal artist that wanted to record an album that they wrote, they could come to me and say, "Hey, I want to work with you and help bring my artwork to life." So, as a freelance audio engineer, that's something that I could help them with.
Okay. That's I mean that's dope. I remember I was trying to get into audio engineering, but then the program that I was looking into, it was like kind of hefty and it kind of like shied me away from it. Let me just work on something else. But I've been thinking about getting back into it because just dealing with all these stuff. Even though a lot of this stuff you can learn it self-taught too.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was self-taught for me, but then after finishing high school, I did go to a trade school where I studied audio engineering at a place locally called Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences. And so I did learn a lot more there as well.
Okay, nice. The one I was trying to go to is called SAE. Is in New York. It's one of the big ones, I think. Well, okay, that's what's up. All right, so tell me, growing up in Phoenix, give me take me through what is take me back to your childhood. Just take me back to your childhood, and then I'll ask further questions.
Okay.
Because I usually ask my best, because I usually ask like, oh, how is it typically growing up in Phoenix for a kid? But like, just go through it or organically, why not?
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, then I was very smart and pretty much everything came easily for me. All my teachers said I was gifted, that I have a bright future. Um, but as I got older, I started having more problems. Of course, like I think when these problems may have started, then it wasn't really debilitating and not something that I was very conscious of. But I started noticing issues really in high school, where I started noticing more chronic fatigue and brain fog where I'd be in school. A lot of times in the afternoon, I would just get this wall of brain fog and hit me where I just couldn't focus anymore. I'd come home and just nap during the day. And so this was also around the time that I started producing music and started my music projects, especially my main one, Origin of Styx. Growing up, I actually was always into music. I was more into classical music
Hmm.
and practiced piano. But when I was in middle school, I think this could have been related to my fatigue or could have been related to childhood sleep apnea. I'm not really sure, but I lost interest and motivation in practicing piano, but I discovered electronic music and immediately I was drawn to it. And I was like, I want to try doing that.
Mm, okay. And would you say like the interest in music grew more because being that well, I think I might be jumping ahead, but were you like stuck at home more, like being because you were sick and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, at least for me, as I said, my main complaint was brain fog, and that's a very vague term that
Mm-hmm.
might mean something different depending on who you ask. So a lot of times it was like I come home from school, I'd be tired, and so I'd end up just napping all afternoon. I'd wake up, but I still couldn't focus enough to work on my homework, but I would spend a lot of time online, and I would message a lot of other music producers. A lot of them were also younger that made electronic music. And so it was kind of, it partly was that I ended up spending more time online and getting more into music. But I originally I had different projects because I wasn't sure exactly what genres I wanted to do until I created my Origin of Styx project, which at the time was more for dark drone ambient. And I guess just over the years, as I kept feeling more depressed, I used that style of music as a form of catharsis for me. And so I was more drawn to that kind of music.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. That's a lot. Because I want to get straight into like the origin of stick stuff and like explaining all that, but I think we should take a few steps back. So take me through life before you started noticing all these things? Like, how was life just growing up, like in Phoenix? What are the things you're getting into? Or is there a lot of bike riding? Is there a lot like did you not did you have friends, but like how was like your neighborhood situation? Like, were the kids around that like able to play with like pretty frequently and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I didn't live in the Phoenix city. So if you actually think about the whole Phoenix Valley, there's the capital of Arizona, which is Phoenix City, and then you have all the surrounding cities, which is basically like the suburbs of Phoenix, like Chandler, Mesa, Gilbert, and whatnot. And so, growing up in the suburbs, I was very active. I did have friends locally that I would do things like scooter with, or build Legos with. And as well as just generally speaking, I think I made friends and got along with people well earlier in elementary school. Of course, it's very hot here, so it's sunny year round. There's not very much rain. It never snows. At least we're not at the part of Arizona that I'm at. If you go up north, there is some snow, but the can get very hot in Fahrenheit. Then the average temperatures during the day is usually well over 100. Um, but at least for me, just growing up here, I feel a sense of connection to the desert.
Mm. How so? Can you explain it?
Um,
Because I had another guy from Arizona. He didn't say anything like that.
he didn't say anything like that.
No, he just like I mean he was like I live in the desert. It is what it is. Because I asked him like, oh, have you ever been to the desert? And he's like, I live in Arizona. Of course
Oh
I've been to
yeah.
the desert.
Well,
Yeah.
see, I was once asked a question. It was kind of funny where somebody from the UK said, "Oh, isn't like the desert of Arizona very sparse, where there's only cities here and there?" Which I guess is just would understand that, European perspective, this is what they might think of the Southwest desert.
Mm.
But at least like the
I
Phoenix
mean,
Valley is basically, sorry?
no, I was just gonna say lucky he even knew where Arizona was. People just know New York, LA, Las Vegas, Florida, the
That's
main.
true.
Yeah.
At least he knows where Arizona is.
Yeah.
But like you have a valley where there's surrounded by mountains, and the Phoenix City, City Phoenix in the middle with all these kind of suburbs surrounding it. Millions of people live in this huge valley, but as you go outside of the valley, it's basically just cactus, dirt, not a lot of living green things. So it's kind of like this city and this suburb, which is inside of this, surrounded by desert everywhere.
Okay, so it's pockets of civilization every so often miles. It's just like
Well, I would
every
say it's more just like a densely populated city. But then as you go outside of Phoenix, like um, Phoenix has a lot of people, but say if you go up north, then there's a lot more smaller towns like Flagstaff. What Tucson is famous, but what is it? Sedona is a famous city in Arizona. It's very beautiful too. Sedona is also sometimes called referred to as the Painted Desert. That's
mm,
where you see like the red rocks. The sunsets here are very beautiful. I remember one of my teachers from my audio trade school. He would always refer to them as the John Wayne sunsets.
mm. Okay, nice. Okay, so it's pretty scenic out there. So so being that you live in a desert, are there any desert activities that you could share with us that might not be common for the average listener? Like stuff you're
Um,
getting into in the desert, like are you guys hunting lizards? You're getting like what are you guys getting into out there?
I mean, I actually did grow up where there were a lot of lizards and geckos, especially in the summertime, and I would enjoy like finding them. I do a lot of bike riding, but that's what's cool is I could do that year round. Even in the winter, it's not like I have to worry about snow or anything.
Hmm.
Um, but I would say one of the biggest things I did that is the most interesting was my experience backpacking with Boy Scouts, just because I got to explore a lot of that area.
Mm. Okay, so you were actually in like the Boy Scouts of America.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you take me to that experience? Like, explain what type, like how do you even like how did you even get into Boy Scouts and like take me through that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think too, my parents wanted me to be well-rounded. Like I said, I did piano lessons. I took some sports. Like I know as a kid, I was into baseball. But with Boy Scouts, I just started in Cub Scouts, and then which is more for elementary school, and then going into middle school, you kind of like graduate to Boy Scouts. But Boy Scouts is definitely a lot more interesting than Cub Scouts because we did a lot of backpacking, uh, you know, earning merit badges, and there's different ranks where you start out as I don't even remember exactly the rank, like tenderfoot, second class, first class. And I actually made it all the way up to an Eagle Scout, which is the highest rank. And so I do remember even then, though, like I enjoy backpacking. We did that pretty much every month. We would go to a different part of Arizona and do like a weekend backpacking trip. But I do feel like even at that time, I was just kind of dragging through fatigue. And so I do remember, especially near the end of trying to get my Eagle, I was had to work really hard to in order to finish up.
And were these symptoms just overlooked as just like as like normal fatigue, like that you would go through like hiking and stuff like that? Or did it seem more like serious?
I didn't have as much physical fatigue as much as mental fatigue.
Mm,
I started doing psychotherapy first. Well, I actually did do psychotherapy earlier when my parents got divorced, just because my mom wanted that. But for me, that really wasn't like a bothersome incident for me. I didn't really start feeling like I needed psychotherapy until I was in high school, and I just, like I said, I started noticing um, just more brain fog, losing interest in things that used to bring me enjoyment. Um, and there were other issues I was having as well. Like I said, I use the term brain fog, but obviously this is a very vague term.
mm-hmm,
Around this time, when I was in high school, I first discovered the term online derealization, which is a type of dissociation where it's typically a result of trauma or anxiety, but I sometimes use these terms brain fog and derealization interchangeably because while sometimes I would describe it more as a cognitive impairment, like I'm struggling to focus, I'm not motivated, whereas other times it more felt like I was almost like stuck inside of a fog and not able to properly engage with the things around me because of being in this fog.
mm. And the way you explain it, I feel like for lack of a better term, it's kind of like a lack of will. Because the will kind of makes it seem like you're choosing not to do it. It's kind of lack of motivation. Like you're just turned
Yeah.
off. Everything is just like super like blah. Like it just feel like that. I don't. It's hard for
No,
me to
that's
explain it.
exactly what it is. Actually, the medical term is called anhedonia.
Mm,
And that literally just translates to not being able to experience pleasure or motivation in things that should make you feel happy.
okay. All right. So before we get into like the full diagnosis of everything, um, what was the wildest thing you saw out doing Boy Scouts?
Um, that's a hard question. I guess I just have a lot of interesting experiences. Probably one of the coolest things I did was when I went to Philmont in New Mexico, where I did a 10-day long backpacking trip in the mountains of New Mexico. That was the
Mm,
longest backpacking trip I did. There was this huge scout ranch where let's say you have every day you'll hike a certain amount of miles to your next campsite, and then at the next campsite there might be like a new activity to do. I remember one day we did like rock climbing. One time we did hike to the next campsite, did archery. One time we like reloaded shotgun shells and practiced like target shooting. And so I would say
and that's
that
all.
the
That's all Eagle Scout level or on your way to Eagle Scout tier.
I mean that's kind of at least with the that scout ranch that I went to, the high adventure base, it was I want to say like you'd have to be at least 14
Hmm.
um was the age limit. But yeah, I think most people I wouldn't say were equals, but they were like a bit higher up in the hierarchy.
Okay. All right. So just stuff like that going on these backpack trips. So nothing like you never saw like had a near death experience with any like wild animals or anything like that.
I wouldn't say almost dying in Boy Scouts. I do remember, say, even doing like barebacks. In my, of course, this depends on the area. Where some areas have more wild animals. When I was in Philmont, then we would always have to get anything that could remotely smell like food to a bear or a wild
Wow.
animal, put it in a bag and hang that bag in the tree. That one of my friends in my troop forgot to put some snacks in there or something, and I think there were some squirrels that like raided through his backpack or something.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. Well, I guess the elephant in the room is, have you ever seen any or heard of any unsavory experiences with Boy Scouts, specifically the Boy Scout leaders and the children in their care?
Um, well, I mean, Boy Scouts having a bunch of kids like 12 to 17, it can just be kind of like a crap show at times, especially because it is kind of boy led.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't really think that we had any major issues other than just kind of guys like, um,
Bullying each other and shit.
well, there was a bit of hazing, but it was more just like banter.
Mm, okay. So you never saw any essay or like you never had any stories like, oh, the troop leader two towns over touched Jimmy or anything, like you never saw any of that.
I've never heard of that.
Okay.
I'm
That's
sure
more of
that's
a
happened.
90s thing.
Well, I remember there was a recent concern of like how, well, I say recent concern. This was a concern that my mom mentioned where some people said that Boy Scout leaders were they
Mhm.
shouldn't have gay Boy Scout leaders because they're afraid that they're more likely to molest kids or whatever, which like, I don't really care. I didn't really see any issues. I actually heard about more issues from the Catholic Church down the street.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. I mean, just asking. Cause I feel like just that's one of the conspiracy theories about like Boy Scouts and stuff like that.
I mean, there was no like sexual grooming, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, yeah, basically. Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. So so no sexual grooming, anything like that. What were so just positive experiences for the most part, a little bit of hazing here and there. It was more physical and
I would
mental.
say probably the most disturbing thing at the time, but of course I got over this fear. When I first was going from Cub Scouts into Boy Scouts, what really freaked me out was needing to crap in the woods.
Mm.
But of course it wasn't really that big of a deal when I got older. You just have to dig a hole and do your thing and then just put the toilet paper in there and bury it back up.
Okay. So no, you guys didn't weren't told to like make sure you brought your stuff back out, like any like don't leave nothing behind, like poop.
I mean, leave no trace was a big thing that they taught us. They basically encouraged us to try leaving the areas that we camped at in a better state than when we found them. So
Okay.
we did a lot of like sometimes we'd do say chat trash sweeps where we'd all line up, and walk through the campsite and look for any trash that might be there, whether it's from us or from people that were before us.
Okay. So I know Boy Scouts is kind of like, well, from my knowledge is preparing men to somewhat be men, survival skills and stuff like that. What were some of like the takeaways that you personally took away from Boy Scouts?
Honestly, I just feel like there were so many experiences that definitely hardened me. Um, I remember like camping in the snow. I remember say backpacking when it was snowing, backpacking when it was raining. Being in freezing temperatures, waking up and sleeping terribly. which I think everyone sleeps terribly when they're camping. But of course, for me at the time, um, I didn't realize I had this sleep apnea and was often forced to breathe through my mouth. And so I'd wake up, have to like a lot of times we would wake up, it'd be like 5 in the morning, and we'd start, put all of our tent stuff back in our backpack, start hiking for, 4 or 5 hours. And so the whole experience of a lot of what I went through, I would definitely say it hardened me.
Okay, that's just it. What percentage of the skills that you learned would you say you use in your day to day? Not day to day, let's just say have you used in life after?
Well, the biggest skill definitely is um, that if I go and apply for a job and it says that I'm an Eagle Scout, then my application typically goes on the top of the pile. But
Oh
I would
yeah?
say that's probably the biggest plus. Yeah. That was something that they even told us. They said, like, try and finish your Eagle because if you make it all the way to Eagle, then that looks really good on job applications.
What's up? I mean, I never heard that angle. Wish I would have got a Boy Scouts. But probably would have helped. Some nepotism. Okay, so nothing like you're not out here just starting fires, hunting, trapping wild game or anything, and they're like skinning animals and stuff. Like,
I remember one time when I did summer camp, one of the favorite merit badges I earned, it was wilderness survival. And so we did talk about some of those skills. And one of my favorite activities we did was where we built our own lean-to and slept in it for the night. And so I think I don't remember exactly the details because I was like 13, but I think I just found maybe a fallen over tree or I leaned a tree over another tree and then basically just put, sticks after sticks, piled it with leaves, put more sticks over and created this kind of little like fortress that I could sleep in for the night.
how sturdy was it?
How what?
How sturdy was it? Was it pretty secure?
Admittedly, ideally with a lean-to, you want it to be so sturdy that even if it rained, it wouldn't go through. But admittedly, I'm not really sure if it achieved that same level of sturdiness.
Yeah, but you passed, pretty much. Okay. All right. Well, speaking about the merit badges, what was the most difficult one to earn?
I honestly don't remember. I think there were some that might have been less had to do with activities or outdoorsy things, but more like, I think there was one like personal finance or something. It's been so many years since I did Boy Scouts, but it was basically you would need X number of merit badges were required. So I'm pretty sure wilderness survival, for example, was required. There were some of them like physical health or personal finance or something like that, which it's honestly been so long I don't really remember much. But again, I feel like what I got out of it wasn't just actually taking the merit badges, but just needing to get through that difficult experience.
Okay. So how long? Oh, I think you said it prior, but how old were you when you finished Boy Scouts? And was it a like, did you just complete it and you were like, hey, I don't want to be a scout or anything, and you just stopped doing it? Or what, like, what was the end for you?
Yeah. So I think I got my Eagle when I was 17, and at least for me, once I was done, I was just kind of like, I'm done. Been there, done that. There are some people that might go back to the Boy Scout troop as Eagles when they're adults and they are, I guess, like part of the adult crew. But keep in mind too, Boy Scouts is largely a boy-led organization. So adults would oftentimes oversee things, but a lot of times there were, some of the older kids, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids were elected to be like patrol leaders and help with, managing the younger kids.
Okay. All right. So okay, because I always in the pictures of it, you kind of you usually just see the male, the older person at the helm of everything, guiding them through everything, but that wouldn't necessarily be the case. You're saying it's kind of more just like an overseer from far. Like,
Um,
do they go on the excursions with you guys? Is what I'm trying to say. Like, do they go on the?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
the adults went on excursions with us, but it was mostly us that planned like the logistics where, let's say, for
Mm,
example, when we had to decide, okay, this is our budget for food, we have to fit everything in a backpack. And so all the packing, figuring out what we wanted to eat and could fit in our backpack, that was all like planned out by the boys.
okay. Okay, makes sense. Okay. All right, so how was it going to high school and being a Boy Scout at the same time? Did you catch flag for this, or was it like a normal thing out there in Arizona?
Um, I mean, I went to a super nerdy school.
Okay.
So I mean, there were a lot of other people that were Boy Scouts. I went to a college preparatory school where we all had to wear like uniforms and everything,
Hmm.
which it's like in Boy Scouts we all had to wear uniforms. So I think most people didn't really think much of that.
It was all similar lane. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So earlier you were mentioning that you didn't realize that you had this disorder. Is it disorder, right? A sleep disorder, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you didn't realize you had it until high school. So what was the take me back to the moment where you realized like something isn't right after like did you tell your mom or like your parents, or was it like someone else noticed?
My parents noticed that I was becoming more depressed and lethargic, but I don't think they were connected that to a sleeping issue. So I had like two rounds of orthodontics around this period, and at the time I didn't realize that there was a connection between my fatigue and my brain fog and the orthodontic work that was being done. Um, so yeah, I guess it was really high school. I was researching online. I came across the term brain fog, and I was like, I feel like that describes a lot of what I was experiencing. I came also across the term derealization. And that was I first started doing psychotherapy in high school, but I guess over the years as I continued through high school, I thought that I was just very depressed, and I think that's what my parents thought as well. I actually ended up failing technically my senior year, um, even though like I knew I was smart, but it was I just couldn't really continue anymore. I had so much fatigue and burnout, so I had to do summer school after high school. I completed the summer school classes, got my diploma a few months late, and I ended up taking a gap year because at this time I was still like, I don't know what I want to do with myself.
Hmm.
Um, Again, I think that I was just kind of fogged up, and also, like I said, I was anhedonic. I wasn't motivated and didn't really experience pleasure in things that the way that I used to.
Hmm.
But every time I go to the doctor, I say I'm having brain fog. I'm feeling depressed, and it's harder for me to fall asleep at night. And they would just keep misdiagnosing that as depression. So after finishing my senior year, that was when I kind of hit this wall, and I was like, um, "Hey, like something's I need to take care of my health." I started trying all these different lifestyle changes. I started trying things like drinking only water, making changes to my diet, intermittent fasting. I tried picking up cycle commuting, so I would only ride my bike places. I tried things like mindful breath meditation. And all of these lifestyle improvements were kind of an effort to get rid of this brain fog slash depression that I was experiencing.
Hmm. And nothing was working.
Some things would help. I felt a bit better after riding my bike, but it was over the years, I just kept feeling worse and worse.
Hmm.
So I tried going to community college once. That didn't work out. And then that was when I ended up going to the audio trade school because I had this mentality of, well, audio and music is one of the things that I'm so passionate about. So maybe if I engage with this hobby, then I'll feel it will kind of pull me out of my depression. And it just ended up making everything worse,
Hmm.
which is frustrating because I barely graduated the program. I didn't enjoy it. Um, and so I was just kind of trudging my feet through all of it and couldn't really just barely scratch the surface of what that program offered. I actually graduated that trade school in 2020. And then it was in 2020, that was when I simply was like, I can't live like this anymore. Physiologically, something's just not adding up because no matter what I'm trying, I keep feeling worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
So that sent me on this long journey where I was basically going in and out of doctor offices, running all kinds of different tests, researching online and trying to rule out what could be causing this brain fog and chronic fatigue.
Mm-hmm. Because I mean, at first, I'm assuming like your parents, they thought it was just depression and stuff. So, and then like you like, I'm assuming like you being yourself, obviously, like you probably knew like, yeah, I probably feel depressed sometimes, but it's not like I just want to end it or anything. Like I just don't feel great all the time. Was it
Yeah,
more so like
it
that?
was like now when I think about it, it was more of a sickly feeling. Like I did have more problems with, I guess, like self-esteem when I was younger, but when I first started getting the brain fog. But as I got older, I was like, hey, I'm really good at music. I'm really good at making these songs, and that gave me a lot of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't even like oh, I'm depressed and I just can't don't want to live anymore, but because I felt optimistic of like if I could just solve this brain fog,
Mm-hmm.
then I feel like this would open up this whole new world of possibilities for me.
Yeah, because you saw that it wasn't that, because it was like it was more so like you're just tired of just the pain of everything.
Yeah.
It was dragging on, like it was weighing on you, for lack of a better term. Okay. All right. So the years goes by. I mean, so I started in high school, and then like around 20 was when you really said like, hey, I gotta go figure it out. So what are the next steps? Like, did you go to like a psychiatrist, still thinking it was like depression or like a mental thing?
Yeah, I mean the whole year was that whole it was 2020. And so yeah, I was like 20,
Mm-hmm.
21. Um I'm 24 now. And so I was basically just researching online like what causes brain fog. And I was finding all these possibilities of, ADHD, fibromyalgia. Maybe it's an issue related to my posture. That was one thing I read online. Some people felt like there were postural issues that were contributing to their brain
Mm-hmm.
fog, or issues with food sensitivities, where let's say if they're sensitive to dairy, then that might cause their brain to fog up. Um, and I would say it was later in that year in 2020 when I saw a neurologist. Um, and I explained to her that my concentration was getting so poor that I was struggling to read, where when I was trying to read, I just felt like the words were all jumbling together on the page and it was getting more difficult to grasp the meaning. And she said that could be caused by brain lesions. So we did an MRI that came back all fine. That's when she said, I think that symptomatically sleep apnea best explains what the problem is. At the time, I thought, like I said, sleep apnea was something that affected people that were older and heavier. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't think that was the issue until
And and you didn't have any clear like nasal issues or anything like that, right?
I did, but I guess I'll talk about that too, because I was actually a chronic mouth breather.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this was kind of ironic. I realized later there was this incident where I think it was my second time getting braces in high school. Then my orthodontist had the mirror in my mouth and I was exhaling on the mirror and he was saying, "Oh, I'm going to have you hold your breath because you're fogging my mirror up." And of course, at the time, I think he didn't really connect that there might be a correlation between my small jaws and crooked teeth and the fact that I couldn't breathe through my nose. But at the
Mm-hmm.
time, I didn't really see how much of an issue it was. Like looking back now, I remember at that time, it was just like trying to suck air through a really tiny straw. But since I grew up like that, I didn't necessarily understand how normal it was to unconsciously be struggling to breathe like that.
I definitely can relate to that. Like I don't know, like I wouldn't say I have it to like the extent maybe that you have, but like growing up my whole life, my mom would say like, "Oh, you have sinuses," and I'm like, "What the hell is that?" But she says in Spanish, so it sounds like an actual disease. Says, "You have sinusitis," and I'm like, "What
Yeah,
is?" So I just that
sinusitis.
sinusitis, yeah. So I just be like, "Oh yeah, that was my excuse for everything." Like, "Oh, I have sinusitis," and then like it wasn't until like I talked to my brother. He was like, "Hey, bro, you probably just have allergies. Like, you gotta go take a like this type of pill." And then I was like, "Oh shit!" Like, cause I started taking a pill, like the certain type of allergy pills, and I'm like, oh wow, like I could breathe more through my nose more frequently. But I stopped doing it because it's just a lot with the pills. But like I have like certain issues, like I don't even notice it either. Like my nose will just be stuffy, and like that's it's just it. Like my nose is stuffy for the day or like for the next few months, and then like I wouldn't even notice that I'm breathing through my mouth and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so so you had these damn, but it's crazy that the doctors didn't realize that. But me thinking like when you were saying that, it's probably like they're focused on let me just make my money right now, uh diagnosing or just fixing your teeth right now, fixing your jaw, whatever. You gotta say like, let me fix this, work on this. I can't diagnose the whole thing.
Yeah, no, that's actually it. I don't necessarily blame the orthodontist, and I'll get into this later when I saw my last orthodontist in my third round of braces. I remember coming to him saying, "Why didn't somebody warn me about this problem? Like, why didn't any of my past dentists or orthodontists look at my mouth and say, 'Oh, your jaws are smaller and you're breathing through your mouth. This might be contributing to your depression and fatigue.'" But at the time, he just said, there just wasn't enough information out back then. We just didn't know.
Not enough studies on that subject. Okay. Wow, that's crazy. So okay, so where were we in the story? So okay, you go the orthodontist says, hey, it might be sleep apnea. Not the orthodontist, the psychiatrist or who the person you were seeing at the moment to try to figure out a diagnosis. So what's
Yeah, it
next?
was a neurologist.
The neurologist, yes, sorry. So what was the next steps after they said, hey, it might be sleep apnea?
So they referred me to a sleep lab, and this was when, based on my own research, I read about this subtype of sleep apnea called UARS, and everything started clicking. Where started putting the issues I was having as a child, where let's say going back to the mouth breathing, I grew up with asthma. I do have some allergies, which I ended up finding out I was allergy tested, um, which could have contributed. I don't think it was a huge factor, but I also grew up with a lisp and a tongue thrust. And so what that means is
What's
that
a
I
tongue
couldn't,
thrust? Sorry. Yeah, oh, my bad. Sorry.
yeah, it's let's say when we swallow or even when we speak, then I guess for me, when I would enunciate certain things, my tongue would kind of thrust through my teeth. And even when I would swallow, like let's say if I drank water, then the proper swallowing, I later learned, is that your tongue is kind of resting on the top of your mouth. So when you swallow, the force of the tongue, as a developing child, can actually help encourage the jaw to grow
Expand.
wider. Yeah.
Ah. So but so if the normal or regular way is to push your tongue towards your teeth and or to the is it to the root of your mouth while you're swallowing?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I
what's
can
the
explain to, I guess I can explain to that more context. I was actually talking about this in the last podcast that I did, that if you go into a museum of history, museum of anthropology or archaeology, and look at whether it's a cast of a skull or an actual human skull, generally speaking, they have larger jaws and straighter teeth, even though obviously in the caveman times they didn't have braces or orthodontics. So it's like, what's going on here? A lot of orthodontists, when they first started becoming a field of study, they thought that this was related to crooked teeth. There was actually one guy in the 60s, I think, or the 50s or the 60s, of a British orthodontist named John Mew, who believed that what was causing crooked teeth and smaller jaws was actually environmental factors. He believed that it was pinned down to a few things that came about maybe a couple hundred years ago, where we started eating softer foods, more processed foods. And so when we're young and our jaws are developing, that doesn't stimulate our jaws as much, as well as, say, um, when we started introducing more things like breastfeeding, then children didn't get the same kind of tongue posture. Where if a child was breastfed, then that actually encourages their tongue to the muscles of their tongue and their face to naturally go into this posture. But that was kind of disrupted by bottle feeding. as well as just learning, living indoors could be more likely to trap allergens. It cause people to mouth breathe, and these were all factors. John, at the time, John Mew believed that contributed to smaller jaws. Of course, a lot of people say it might have been money influence that this was discredited at the time by orthodontists, but over the years, a lot of what he initially believed has been it's been shown that there's actually a lot of evidence to support that.
Hmm. Yeah, it's just so great. The way like everything's just connected and like over time it's like you see it like it just affects more and more and then like the features like they keep like let's say if because you pass that down too in a way even though it's not it is kind of like genetics kind of because then you're changing your own genetics in a way because then it's like that's just how you breathe as a human and like, if evolution is what we think it is right like because that's like an adaptation maybe not for the good but it's an adaptation that's happening anyway. Hmm.
Well, what I learned is that the body like adapts, let's say, for having these underdeveloped jaws. So if like your airway is smaller, then um, let's say if you imagine your airway is kind of confined by your jaws and your neck, then it could cause you to start to adopt this like neck posture.
Mm.
So a lot of people believe that a lot of these issues that are afflicting people now, like like I said, mouth breathing or even having forward head posture, could be related to having underdeveloped jaws.
Okay, so all right, so you go to the neurologist and did you so I think we kind of got sidetracked so what happens when you're there.
Yeah, they were so
Did
the
it,
neurologist referred me to the sleep lab.
the sleep lab,
Um,
yes.
and I did a sleep study, but um, it was hard to detect the breathing issues, kind of like how I was saying before that um, it was later shown that people with that are of a younger and thinner build um, might go to a sleep lab and they say, well, it doesn't really seem like you're having many apneic episodes, and so maybe sleep apnea is not the problem.
Mm.
In my sleep study, I was diagnosed with very mild borderline sleep apnea, which was ironic for me because I felt like I was dying all the time. Like this was when my health was just completely falling apart. I simply couldn't go on anymore. But as I was researching about this UIRS, then a lot of these other younger people were complaining about this debilitating fatigue and saying, I did this sleep study. It says that there's no sleep apnea or when
Mm.
there's mild sleep apnea, but I'm still debilitated by this.
So then
Um,
you started seeing the pattern that these younger skinnier people are being overlooked.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
exactly.
Hmm.
I ended up joining this community online for it was called like Sleep Disorder Breathing on Discord. And I talked to this guy from France who was about my age at the time, and he had pretty much all the same symptoms that I did. And his advice to me was if there's anything I could recommend, then find a psychotherapist that specializes in trauma. And so when I started putting all of this together about the jaws, the airway, the sleep apnea, I found my last psychotherapist or my last orthodontist, as well as my psychotherapist at the time. And so when I met my orthodontist, pretty much the first thing he said when he walked in, I remember the reason actually why I met this orthodontist was because I heard of this new type of adult palate expansion procedure where by widening the upper jaw, this basically could widen the whole floor of the nasal cavity and improve somebody's ability to breathe through their nose. And this started like clicking with me too, where I grew up with this tongue thrust. I wasn't placing my tongue properly in my mouth. Now my palate is narrow. So maybe if I make it wider, I can breathe better through my nose. So I went to this orthodontist and I said, hey, I think I'm having these problems. And I felt relieved immediately because I felt like this guy actually kind of had somewhat of an idea of what I was talking about. Pretty much the first thing he said was, "This expander probably is not going to fix your problem. The best treatment is called the Bimax advancement, where an oral maxillofacial surgeon cuts and advances the upper and the lower jaws to make the whole airway larger here." And he
Hmm.
said that they had a surgeon they worked with and could refer me for that.
So did you go through with it?
Yeah. So this was at that time where when I sat down with my parents and the orthodontist, my parents were like, "That sounds very invasive. We don't want to do this major jaw surgery, because of course, you don't want to see your friend or see your son needing to get his jaws cut off his face."
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I was doing all my research, and I'm like, I really feel like this is what I need to fix this brain fog. And so initially, I was planning on consulting at least 4 or 5 different surgeons because I wanted to get as many opinions as I could. But as my symptoms were worsening, it was like I felt like I couldn't think my way out of a paper bag. Um, I ended up actually getting a diagnosis of PTSD based on the symptoms that I presented with, where as my sleep quality was worsening, these trauma symptoms were getting worsening as well, which is why, like I said, this young French man recommended that I try finding a psychotherapist that deals with trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as my health was worsening, I ended up reaching back out to my orthodontist. I said, "Look, like I'm done chasing down doctors. I just need to sleep better. I can't live like this anymore. I was suicidal at this point." And I ended up going to the surgeon that he referred me to. It was kind of a tie between I'm going to try and fight my insurance, and if it doesn't get covered here, I'm going to try getting my passport renewed and see if I could go to Cancun and get the surgery done there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to the surgeon. I had the operation done about 2 years ago, and immediately I noticed that I no longer was waking up feeling like I was being hit by a truck. And so my fatigue was starting to improve, but it was just this kind of gradual process where I felt like over the months my airway was swelling. But it was kind of like over time, I was noticing that as my brain fog was improving, I started, I went back to part time work. I started going back to doing school again. I started cycling everywhere again. I got back into cycling. I started hitting up the clubs again, trying to meet people at clubs locally and promoting my music project. So my life was starting to turn itself around, but as I went past the 6 month mark, I felt like something was not quite right as I realized that my symptoms were just not progressing to the extent that I was hoping for. I was beginning to develop neck pain, as
Mm-hmm.
well as noticing that there was discomfort in my chin. And so I researched, and I at the time I came to the conclusion that the surgery was botched, which my mom said that that's a very harsh term. Um, but I was like, I want to get a second opinion and consult these surgeons that I before felt like my brain was so fogged up, I just didn't have the patience to talk with them anymore.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what happened when you go to get the checkup on the surgery?
Yeah, so I consulted two revision surgeons.
And
Um,
sorry, and also if you need any time to take a breath or anything, because I noticed like we're talking a lot, and you're telling me a story where you couldn't breathe, so it's like I'm still constantly thinking like, wait, hold on, like are you having a rough time right now? But if you need to take a breather or anything, I know like you've been talking a lot, so I get it. But yeah, continue. Sorry.
yeah, so I saw two surgeons. The first one, they're both in California, which I'm not sure why all the best sleep doctors are in California.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was in the Bay Area, who had his private practice called the Sleep Apnea Surgery Center. His name was Dr. Casey Lee. And then the second surgeon was in Santa Barbara. His name was Dr. Michael Gunson and had his private clinic, Arnick Gunson Facial Reconstruction. And so they both kind of confirmed what I said, where they said, yeah, I definitely would have done this surgery differently. Um, and to go into the logistics of it, the concern, and they had kind of affirmed this concern, was that the surgeon that I was referred to did not have the skill or the knowledge to rotate the upper jaw enough to advance the lower jaw, so he compensated by giving me a huge chin, which you can kind of see on the video here. I realized that there was like a lopsided piece of a metal plate in my face.
Okay, so well, it'll be to the left side of your face right here, like where you're.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It
I mean,
basically just felt like the skin was being stretched unnaturally.
mm,
And
okay.
so
It doesn't look noticeable at all, honestly.
yeah, it really doesn't look that bad. Of course, for me, like because I would feel the discomfort, then I it would upset me. But that's why I grow the beard. I honestly think I'm like was always a very good looking person, so it's not really that bothersome.
Okay. I was gonna ask, is there a noticeable change in your appearance? Because like you were saying that you had a jaw like surgery, and your jaw does look pretty defined. Like it doesn't look overly defined either, until you just know like said the chin thing. But
Yeah.
it looks like you look like you have a normal like build to me. But is there a clear difference?
Um, if you actually looked at pictures of me before, well, actually, I feel like I might have looked more different or looked a lot younger before the expander actually. And this I wasn't expecting aesthetic changes from this, but after getting this palette expander, which widened my
Yeah,
face like this, widening my upper jaw, I noticed that it had
your
expanded
cheek.
my whole cheekbones as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
you maybe you can notice that more.
Well,
So
yes. I wouldn't say like I know it definitely do look old. It kind of gives like a sunken cheek feel, so it kind of makes you look a little older.
yeah, I
Okay.
felt like I looked a lot more mature after that.
Okay.
But with at least with the first jaw surgery, it was pretty disappointing for me because I was looked I thought like I looked good before, but um, I was always kind of unconsciously adopting this bad neck posture where I was kind of jutting my jaw forward. So I wouldn't necessarily say that my jaw looked recessed. Um, but if for the first few months, it was the swelling was covering the face, and like I looked really good. People left and right were complimenting me. They were saying, "Oh, your surgeon did such a great job." But then as the swelling went down, then it was just kind of like, "Oh, well, I just ended up being more disappointed with the results."
So you thought you had like ugly Squidward face, and then it just went back to normal.
Um,
If you get the
I wouldn't.
reference.
I am actually not. I don't actually know if I know the. I guess it was like I felt like I went from being like a normal kid to like be looking like a Giga Chad to just going back to looking like a normal kid.
Okay, I get it. I get it. Because you felt like, oh shit, this is like how I look if I was like super like more muscular. Because you said it was like more full, so it made you look like a bigger guy in the face. So it made you look different. I get it. I get it. I get it. Okay. So okay, so what happens? So what happened that then? Like what were your next steps after that? You got the second opinion. They said, hey, they didn't do it correctly. What now?
Yeah. So I consulted both these surgeons, and both me and my mom agreed that we liked the second surgeon more because he did a lot more thorough job of explaining the issue. With Dr. Michael Gunson, sat down with us for like 2 hours, did a lot of scans, and basically just said, like, look, I'm not trying to sell you this surgery. I'm not trying to tell you you need this thing, but I would have done this surgery differently, and this is how I would have done it. And he basically said that um, that by
The rotation.
doing more rotation, then the jaws would be more like this. So he basically his plan for the revision was he said, I want to rotate your upper jaw more, um, put back the chin, and this would be able to add on an entire centimeter to the lower jaw, which would basically add a whole centimeter to the airway here. He basically said the purpose of the face is that it allows us to breathe, eat, and communicate. And he said that if there's something wrong with the facial development, kind of like I said, whether it's mouth breathing or not having a good posture, then the jaws become underdeveloped. And so the body has to compensate by exerting extra effort to breathe or eat or communicate or whatever. He did say too, I can't really promise how much this is going to improve your life though, because he said other patients with a similar airway or jaw structure size might not be as debilitated as you are because you seem very receptive to problems that are going on inside of your body. The term he actually used was called interoception, where you said you seem very aware of issues and things that are going wrong in your body. But that
Mm,
was his assessment.
okay. So you didn't do any. You haven't done any revision surgeries yet.
Not yet, but
Oh,
I am still planning on doing the revision later this year. That's kind of
okay.
my hope is that once I get the revision done, then um, I can kind of start my music career and that everything I've kind of worked over the past few years, documenting like what I've been through with this issue and through my music can basically just take off. And I'm hoping I can finally turn that into a career.
Okay. I mean, I hope I wish the best for you in that aspect. Um, how these procedures, these surgeries, how were they one session things? Was it multiple sessions? What was the duration?
So typically with orthodontic surgery, which is jaw straightening surgery, it's done with plan between an orthodontist and a surgeon because sometimes the surgeon wants to get the teeth a certain way before they move the jaws.
Hmm.
But the actual surgery itself, I think my last one was about 4 or 5 hours, and then my surgeon, Dr. Gunston, who was going to do the revision, said usually a revision surgery might take an extra 30 or 40 minutes just because they have to remove some of the screws and hardware that's in my face from the first surgery.
Wait, an extra 30 or 40? So how long does it take in general?
I think probably, you know, maybe anywhere from like 4 to 6 hours.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot, bro.
It's
Damn.
it's a very invasive procedure. Like consider that wisdom tooth removal is an oral surgery that takes about 30 minutes. So it's like jaw surgery is you know many times the duration and invasiveness of just getting your wisdom teeth out.
And what do you remember from like being out?
Yeah, I remember I was really excited to get the surgery the first time, but I was just felt like a tired corpse, and so I was like, I just want to start feeling better. But I just remember waiting in the hospital. They wheeled me into the operating room, kind of laid me down on the table. I remember looking up and seeing the lights, and then I don't remember if they put an IV, hadn't put something in my V or something, but I basically blinked. And then it was just this whole blur where I was in my own um, like little room in the hospital. My face was really swollen. There was kind of like an aching, like I felt like I just gotten beat up in my face. Blood was like kept coming out of my mouth. And so that was basically what that was like the when I
So,
got the surgery.
so you just remember falling asleep and waking up at some point.
Yeah.
Oh, everything was done. So you don't like nothing like anything from the other side, no astral projection, nothing crazy like that.
No, luckily I've heard of like there are some instances of people where for a second they've like start to become slightly conscious under anesthesia, but they're so like drugged that they don't feel pain. Like
Hmm.
I've heard it's very rare, but let's say of like people who are like, oh, I think I would start was heard like this the doctors in the operating room or the anesthesia started to wear off. But luckily, no, that didn't happen to me. That would probably freak me out.
Word, word, thank God. Oh man, that's a lot, bro. So during this whole process, you've been creating music, and so get more into the music. Like explain more of it to me. Like what what's your what's the like all right, just dive into music because I was gonna say like what's the creative process, but it's also like what is your genre, but like it's everything. Just break it down to
Yeah.
me.
So when I first started making the music, at least with my main music project, I was just kind of taking random sounds and samples, like for things that were recorded. And I found that when I would stretch them out and pitch shift them down and added a lot of effects, I could create these kinds of interesting, like ambient textures. And so I started making this kind of ambient music. And then I also started getting more into techno and hardcore techno, and I liked the aggressiveness, but also the steady beat of that music. And so that brought me to a very obscure subgenre on the internet called Doomcore, which is basically like something in between dark ambient and hardcore techno, where you still have the four on the floor pound, but also these kinds of dark ambient textures. And so a lot of even if you look at the album covers, I would try and incorporate elements of what I went through, in my songs. Let's say I have like an album cover where it was like a scan of the side of my jaws, or an album cover where it was the palate expander,
Hmm.
or like the front scan of my jaws, or even one of my recent album covers was I took it was literally just my face on the cover with a mask. It looked like kind of like a helicopter mask, but that was the first time that I got a CPAP machine.
Okay. All right. I think I'm seeing some of your stuff here. All right, I see like there's like an X-ray and
Yeah.
like okay.
Those were basically album covers where I would literally take the medical scans and I was like, I'm going to make this as an X-ray. And so let's say if my music got bigger in the future and people are asking me questions about like, well, what's up with this album cover? And I could explain to them um, that a lot of the songs that I made in that time period, it was a reflection of what I was going through mentally at the time.
Mhm.
And so that's why I refer to it as almost like an audio journal where I can go back at these different albums I wrote over the years and see what exactly I was going through mentally when I made it.
Okay. So I have it up right here. Can you let me know? So are these all yours? Oh, okay. I see
Yeah.
now the mask. Okay.
Yeah, that's all my music. Yeah, there's the CPAP. Um I made this kind of like I guess black metal looking logo. You can see some of those for a few years in a row. I would wear black metal corpse paint on Halloween because
Mm-hmm.
I was very influenced by the black metal silent aesthetic. So on some of those album covers, I literally just took like a picture of me in my Halloween costume and kind of edited it and used that as a cover.
Like this one right here. This is it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I kind of see this is before the surgery, right?
Yeah, that was actually before the surgery. So, I still had the kind of wider cheekbones, but you can see that
Mm-hmm.
both my upper and the lower jaws weren't quite as forward on my face.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, definitely. You guys, we gotta go check out Origin of Styx. Let's see. Where?
I'm on all platforms.
Yeah, everything will be down in
Bandcamp,
the description.
hmm,
Yeah, everything definitely. So you're on Bandcamp,
Bandcamp, Spotify, SoundCloud, and pretty much any other streaming platform. I guess this is a really cool story about my music. Hint, hint, anybody listening. But one of my fans from the UK, when he heard about my health issues, he said that he had a relative that passed away and he inherited a lot of money. Which, of course, when I told my mom that, she said that sounds like a scam. But he ended up basically sending me a large donation, which I was able to use to fund like a music campaign. And so even if you search on TikTok, then there are some people that would use my songs in the background of their TikTok videos. And that was because of this like promotional campaign that one of my fans funded.
nice. That's dope. That's what's up, bro. God bless that man. Hell yeah. And was he like young like you too? Like,
No, this guy cracks me up because he inspired me to start getting into this genre of music called jungle, which was like a kind of early drum and bass in the 90s.
mm.
But this guy's like in his 50s, but he would sometimes talk with a lot of slang and refer to me to like as like bro or mate or whatever. So that was fun.
That's hilarious. That's what's up. That's what's up, man. Like just like a good guy out there in the world. That's what's up, man. Okay, damn. That's what's up, bro. That threw me for a loop. So, so how would you describe your lyrics?
Most of the songs are instrumental. There's only
Okay.
a handful of songs that have lyrics. Um, I mean, I guess if I'm going to go through my creative process, like now, if I'm going to make, say, like techno music, then I usually start with the drums. But my technique is I just basically just start like throwing sounds into my computer and just start editing and processing and mixing everything down and kind of sculpting the sound. I view it almost as like a sculpture creating this thing where he's like kind of chiseling the sound to fit a certain way. And I just kind of like to mess around until eventually I'm happy with the final result. And I say I think this is good enough to call a song. I would consider myself my own biggest fan. So I personally just I decide to finish a song once I'm happy with the end result. Because I personally just make the kind of music that I myself would want to listen to.
And that's what she said. I'm definitely gonna check out your music. You didn't send me any links prior, so I wish I would have saw it. Would have definitely listened beforehand. But okay, so no, so the I always ask my guests, have you and being that you are in Arizona in the desert, I want to ask, have you ever experienced anything spiritual, UFO, or just something you couldn't explain?
Um, I think I mentioned Sedona earlier because that's kind of a place that's like has some like mythology surrounding that kind of stuff. But I would say the closest thing that I would came to that was um after graduating high school when I was trying to get through this audio trade school, I started going to raves and tried a lot of different psychedelics, as well as just getting interested in, like I mentioned, that I um, was trying to use meditation as a tool to see if it helped my depression. But at one point, it almost became like an obsession. As well as I tried something like a sensory deprivation tank to see if this would help, which is basically where you, do you know what a float tank is?
Yeah, yeah, I know what a sensory deprivation thing is. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say like these experienced psychedelics, meditation, sensory deprivation, and then even after my health collapsed the first time, when I became so dissociated, then it basically felt like this year plus long out of body type experience is what I
Mm.
would say that a lot of the experiences I went through being dissociated felt similar to some of the experiences taking psychedelics, just in a less comfortable way.
Mm. That's crazy. Well, it's just you never, but you never had any overt, like you haven't seen anything. You haven't seen any ghosts or anything like that either.
No,
Okay.
I actually, it was just kind of totally a random story. I remember last year when the whole UAP thing was going on, that was really interesting to me, hearing the Congress meeting about the UAPs. And one time I was like walking back from a Walmart, this was like in around Christmas time, and I saw like this, moving like glowing orb in the sky. And I was like, um, I don't know if this is Santa got lost or something, and this is a UAP, but eventually I realized I'm like, oh, that's actually probably one of those like floating candles or like those Chinese like floating candles or whatever they're called.
Um, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't be too sure about that. Oh, damn. What
It
is it?
wouldn't surprise me. I do believe that there's the whole UAP conference. I'm like, something's definitely going on there.
So, damn, you just triggered me, bro. God damn it. Your orb thing. The orb thing is kind of is very interesting, especially because the orbs are usually associated with people that have traumatic experiences in their lives. So you should research I think his name is Bledsoe. Uh Bledsoe.
How do you spell
Uh,
that?
Bledsoe. I know one of his sons has a podcast because it's a whole family, but the father had the main experience, but it's a whole family that has experiences with the whole shit. Bledsoe Says So is the name of the podcast. I'm forgetting the name of like the first name or whatever. But that just reminded me like I had a guest on and he also saw the orbs and he also has like traumatic experiences, so there's definitely a correlation with people that have had traumatic experiences seeing these things.
Yeah, well, I would say one thing that the what probably interested me the most when I was researching this, and you may have heard of this story. I don't remember exactly when the year was, but it was in like an African city where there was a
The
group of
children at
school
the
children.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was my favorite story that I read about that.
Yeah, that one is dope. And I've seen I think they did like some recent thing with them, like they went back over there again. The same guy, I think I'm forgetting the name, but it's like a main documentary out on them. But yeah, it's a lot out there. Like you never know. the you saying the orb just like triggered. I was like, oh, another orb. And you already say like I mean, you told me you told me your whole life like it's definitely traumatic experiences there, but you haven't had any profound. But you saw the orb at least. Have you
Yeah,
seen them more ever since that, or that was the only time?
that was the only time.
Okay, and you don't know if you was just tripping or not,
Like I said, I was like, I don't know if that's a UAP or if just like Santa
like a
lost his
candle.
way, or yeah, if it was well, that was kind of my because it was around Christmas. Well, I don't, it's like Santa, but no, I thought it might have been one of those like Chinese floating candles.
Okay, all right. Definitely. I mean, check out that podcast and you'll probably find like the original story with the dad, or I'll send it to you. I'll definitely send you some of that stuff. So is there anything else like the people could expect from you? Like any projects you're working on, any like albums or anything that's coming out,
I would
or just anything?
say, well, actually, it's kind of interesting. I guess I should mention the because the reason why I thought about going on these podcasts was the first time I was interviewed on a podcast, I was interviewed on a channel called Jaw Hacks, where he interviews other patients that have issues related to underdeveloped jaws because he grew up with having this chronic headache issue that he found was caused from breathing issues. But what I learned in one of my music business classes is that people don't buy what you do, but they buy why you do it. And
Mm,
so at least for me, I put a lot into my music, and sometimes I am kind of disappointed. Like I wish I already had my music career. But
mm-hmm,
that's kind of the I hope that um, by sharing my experience as well as advocating for other people's health, then people can kind of uh, look at those audio journals and maybe be able to appreciate them in a different light.
definitely, definitely. Damn, man, that's a lot, man. I wish I would have listened to the music beforehand, so I would have get an honest take. But I mean, we are running out of time. But so isn't there isn't any specific like projects that you want the people to check out or anything like anything that you're working on or anything that's out now? I mean, I'm gonna have your description, everything in the description, but people like to hear it.
Oh, yeah, actually, if there's one thing I would recommend people listen to that they're most curious, um, before my first surgery, I put out an album called Hypnagogia. That word hypnagogia translates to leading to sleep. It's like I don't know if you've ever had an experience. It's kind of similar to like sleep paralysis, but sometimes when you're nodding off, then you might have this sudden like mini hallucination that you're falling, and then you jerk yourself awake. And so the reason why I called this album this was because at this time I was so sleep deprived and was basically dissociating and going crazy. And what's interesting to me about that album in specific is I feel like you can actually hear the lack of mental clarity in my music and the fact that everything just sounds like literally just
Lethargic.
sounds foggy to me.
Man,
Yeah, I would say I mean, it is lethargic, but like I would say foggy,
okay. The brain fog. We gotta keep it with the brain fog. Brain fog music.
brain fog music.
Yeah. Okay, so any last words you want to share with people? Oh, actually, so this is something I wanted to ask you earlier, and we are running short on time, but what are some of the signs that people need to look out for, like just in, just so like they don't overlook serious issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think that more orthodontists are becoming aware about this issue. And like I said too, I'm not saying that everyone with sleep apnea is going to have symptoms that get as bad as mine do, but I think, if you're noticing that you have a child or you know somebody who has a child that is having some of these issues where they're having issues breathing through their nose, they're having issues pronunciating, their teeth are crooked, then or they're having these symptoms maybe related to like inattention, ADHD, fatigue during the day, falling asleep, or not being able to fall asleep at night. I think that these all need to be explored as well as anybody that sleeps 7 or 8 hours but still complains about being fatigued. I think that's worth exploring, and that should be something that should be looked at.
Okay. All right, no, definitely. Definitely don't overlook the signs, guys. You never know what could be going on with your body. Um, So I just added the your most recent song Smog. I'm gonna give that a listen when we finish up. Any
Yeah,
other recommendations? So you said the album that was called Somaldum. No. Was it Somald? Somad
Hypnagogia.
Hypnagogia. I'm not seeing that on. Oh, I see it here. It's under EPs. Okay.
Yeah, I used the palette expander as the picture for that.
I had that when I was younger. Cause I had
Yeah.
like oh my braces. I needed braces bad.
So
Even
it's
though.
the at least with the palette expander with children, it typically just attaches to the teeth.
Hmm.
But at least when with young adults, that was like literally screwed into the roof of my mouth.
Okay, yeah, I see it's different because the one I had, it was kind of like a retainer, and then it had that mechanism in the top, and I'll have to put like a stick not a stick. It has a tool, but then I'll lose this tool, so I'll have to use like a fucking bobby pin or something, and then like I fucking like twist it back to expand this shit.
That was exactly what the process of like I had a little wrench,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would go like that, and every day I would crank it once, and it would just kind of like widen like that.
Mm-hmm. Nah, definitely. Okay, so one more time, let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, so I'm Origin of Styx. That's spelled with STYX. You can find me on pretty much any streaming platform online, Spotify, SoundCloud, Bandcamp, or even if you prefer Pandora, Apple Music. You can email me if you have questions, originofsticks@gmail.com. I am also open to bookings where like I said, I just play my original music. But if you are needing it, whether it's maybe it's like a apocalypse themed wedding or whether it's just something that you need at the club, then don't hesitate to reach out about that.
Nice. And so do you play like I know yours is more Doomcore you said it was called? Do you play other genres? Like do you have a hip hop set or a R&B set or let's say are you more diverse like with your DJ is what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah. I guess it depends on what I'm being booked for because if somebody like wants me to DJ for their wedding and they're like, I want you to play like 80s classics, then
Hmm.
I could do that. But if I'm being booked as, I guess there's a difference between being booked as Ethan Hackett and being booked as Origin of Styx. If
Okay.
somebody wants to hear an Origin of Styx set, then I would basically just play anything that I made myself.
Hmm. Okay, nice. Definitely, man. I gotta check it out, bro. But I mean, just like that, guys, it's been a great episode. Ethan, I appreciate you stopping by and telling your story, man. It's an amazing story, and you're still fighting, still pushing forward, and it's good to see like that. Even though like it's a lot, like even with you doing your last surgery and like it not turning out how you may want it to, at least it kind of alleviated some pain, and but you're still pushing forward and still wanting more. You're not giving up, and I just want to. I just want to give you like your props, man. Like it is, I know it's not easy, bro.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely very tiring living with chronic illnesses.
Mhm. Yeah, man. But just let me stay strong, man, and you can always hit me up. And you always gotta if you ever need anything well, like if you ever need to promote anything or just talk, you always gotta slot on the show, man. Have a
Cool.
great
Thanks.
night, bro.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys. See you guys, man. Peace. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Go follow Ethan. Go subscribe to on Spotify. Go just go buy actually buy some music, go to the Apple store and buy the music, man. Support Ethan, and hopefully one day we're going to see him doing some big sets like Marshmallow or whatever. Just like that, we out of here. Peace.